Okay, so when you're in here, inside of Premiere, so notice that what we've got is we are in, let's actually set this up. Let's set this properly. Normally, you're going to be in something like this. You're going to be in a workspace that's for editing. So as a reminder, I want you guys to really think about what job you're doing currently in the software, because when you look at this list here, there are a variety of different workspaces that are aligned to specific jobs that you're going to be doing inside of this program. Notable ones, like I said, editing, effects, audio, and then graphics all the way down here. Or also, they took the last two here and they kind of lumped them together as captions and graphics. So generally speaking, those are some major ones that you'll be using, especially audio, captions and graphics, effects, sometimes color, and editing. So you will be switching between workspaces when you do this, when you work in the software. So the idea is that when you are, if you're cutting a video and you're putting things together, you're going to be working in the editing workspace, which should look like this. When time comes to do some additional piece where you're going to be adding text and graphics to your video in order to provide that call to action for your commercial or PSA project. Now remember, the call to action is the thing you want the viewer, the audience member, to do once they see this. So what are some examples, again, of calls to action that you would see in commercials? Something like, call now, operators are standing by. Or go to the website, www.buystuff.com. Or come on down to 123 Main Street, and visit our location. So when you looked inside of your proposal for your project, I asked you, is there a phone number to call? Is there a website? Is there a location for people to go to? Now, sometimes you guys would interpret these in very interesting, novel ways. Like you'd say, Supreme. Yeah, Supreme is a location, and that's the location of the flagship store in Manhattan. And I was like, yeah, but people around the country aren't just going to fly to Manhattan just to go to well, maybe you would. Maybe you would fly to Manhattan just to go to the Supreme store, which I think is a waste of time. But the notion of how you're going to show that call to action, okay? So what you have is the idea of you would want to create, I'm going to set this aside because this is kind of a fixed example, but you're going to create what they would call a graphical element. That's this thing right here. This particular thing is like a media clip, but it is so you can make it longer, shorter, as you like. But inside of it, it's got multiple elements, okay? And so sometimes it would be that you're going to have a graphical element like this, which does not look anything like me. And then you've got a text that's revealed onto the screen. So all of these are things that you can do with Premiere in terms of how it's going to be presented on screen. So let's crack this open and have a look inside and see what it's got. So in this case, to do that, I want to switch workspaces. And so to do that, we're going to switch to the graphics workspace down here or the caption and graphics workspace here. When you do that, it actually kind of reorganizes things, sets you up with the effect controls tab. It might also be here, but you have the effect controls tab on the top left panel. You also on the right-hand side have essential graphics. And this is the thing that you're going to use. And it's very similar in function to how you worked in Photoshop. So part of the reason why I had you work in Photoshop was so that you understood layers, okay? And that's what this is right here. This graphic that you're looking at here is actually a set of layers of different items, different elements. Okay? The point of this is that it actually provides you with the capability of putting different items together. So notice that there's two text layers. There's the owl teacher layer. There's a background, so you can turn the background on and off. You can turn this on and off. You can turn the text on and off. And then there's this linear wipe effect, which I don't remember where I got that one. It might be. It's not one that I added here, so it's something that I had to put into this. But I'm not gonna replicate this today for this one. But you'll notice that the idea of these layers is very similar to Premiere. So if, for instance, I take this one and I want to move it and I put it over top of the owl, you see that it's sitting on top of the graphic of the owl because the owl teacher is underneath. If it was vice versa, the owl would be on top of the text, and now you don't see the text. Wherever the hat is or wherever the wings go, you can't see any of the text. So the point of arranging these things in layers allows you to stack things, have things visible or obscured by other objects that are on top. So when creating a new one, if you're creating a new one from scratch, you would probably want to, first of all, make sure nothing's selected in the timeline. Notice that it kind of empties everything out here. You have the idea of a new layer under in the Essential Graphics panel. We go to the Edit tab. If you stay on the Browse tab, you'll see a lot of pre-existing graphics that are put together. I'm not going to use any of them, but you're welcome to look them over. They're all kind of interesting, and they show you different techniques in terms of how to animate things and other approaches. So you can learn a lot from playing with them. But under here, we're going to create one from scratch. So go to Edit and click the new layer, and it's going to fly out a menu, and you choose what you want there. So let's say that you wanted to start with a text. And notice that the text is not visible. That's because right down here, it's set to black. If we wanted to set this to a different color, you'd obviously start to see it. So you have a text layer and you'd say, call now. Okay? Keep it simple. So you can take that and you can align it to the center of using these different controls. You can kind of place that text anywhere on the screen. According to this, you can also, if you have it in some weird location, you can also align it to the vertical and horizontal center of the whole frame. So that when it's all by itself, it's going to work with these. It works the same as these two. These are think of each of these as being a different layer. So if I add another text layer and double click on that. Okay, nope. And operators, standing by. Cool. And I get them both over top of each other. You can start to arrange things with these controls in interesting ways. You could have them be aligning them by different measures. So if I align both of them, you'll see that they're both aligned with each other and so on. So it's a little bit weird to have them standing or having all of them standing like this. But if you did arrange them so that they were, kind of the right-hand sides were all lined up, you could do that. Cool. So you've got your text. Now you basically want to include some kind of a graphic. So if you come down here and you want to you can include shapes. They've got rectangles, they've got circles and ellipses, they have polygons of varying sizes. You can make triangles or anything more. Or pull something from a file. So if I pull in a I'm looking for, I mean, what the heck? I'll just do a poster from a film. So here's a Chinatown poster, and say that is something that I wanted to be on screen. This is maybe it's a company logo, maybe it's some other kind of graphic that you want on there. And what the thing about it is that now that is that this whole thing. Notice that it has a black background, but it is it's in fact not that black background that you see is actually transparent. So if I go in here to find I don't even know what this picture is. God, I hope I'm not going to regret this. Whatever. So I'm not going to regret it. If I said that this was a background, notice that I've placed that background into place. This is separate from what's in the graphic, which is this. So this text here, this image here, is not the same as what this graphic is. This graphic is this layer, and this one. So what we can do is we can actually change these so that they are more visible. And then how do you deal with the fact that part of it is black here, but if the background here is black, how would you deal with that? Is you could use what they call a stroke, which is an outline. And notice that when I enable it, it makes those letters faintly visible on the side, and we can increase the size of that so that now they're more clearly visible regardless of what the background looks like. Okay, so that's graphic, just basic graphic stuff. So a lot of this is kind of leveraging what you already got from Photoshop, like fills and strokes. Those should be hopefully familiar to you. When dealing with text, you do have the ability to change the size of the text. So you can scale things up or down. You can make things transparent or opaque. You have all sorts of controls here. So this is great, but this is just a starting point. What we want to do is we also want to make sure that we're doing this animation. We want to animate things so that they show up on screen. So if we wanted to do something similar to this, we need to transition to effect controls. Now, when looking at effect controls for a particular graphic, you've got to understand that notice that it says graphics up here, and that corresponds to this being a graphics clip. And the first group that they'll show, I'm going to compress this down. So graphics is the clip type, and then this part right down here is kind of the overall treatment inside of this the sequence. So you have elements down here that you can change, and each of these parameters can be moved. You can scale things, you can move them and reset them, and so on. When you also have one for this vector motion is for the whole graphic that you've created here. So this behaves as the whole group together. You have individual clips like this one where you can scale this down and up and do this. You can add, or you can change the value of that. And then, so we're going to set this back to 75. And you have the idea of other values that you can set as well. Now, when dealing with animation, so far I'm just showing you things that you probably already know. The thing that changes it in Premiere is the fact that you have the ability to animate stuff. You have the ability to change the values of these properties over time. So when you think of animation, when you think of keyframe animation, how many here have ever done any kind of keyframe animation? Okay, a couple. Good. So the idea of keyframe animation is basically this. Where you set a keyframe, Jose, when you set a keyframe in Premiere, you're basically saying, at that time, that exact moment in the timeline, I want those values to be set to those values. The values of this property to be set as they're shown. And then you move the playhead backward or forward some amount, and then you create another keyframe and you change the values. Whatever that change is, that difference, Premiere is going to basically do the math for you to animate that. Whether that is animating a movement, a physical location movement, like a position movement, or a rotation, or a scale, or a transparency, which in this case is called opacity. It's the opposite of transparency. So you can keyframe all of that and get all of this behaving similarly. So to that end, what we'll do is we're going to start with we'll move the playhead here. Oh, the other thing I want you to notice is when you move this playhead up here, notice what it's doing down on the timeline. So this timeline is linked. And that is because you can't do these kinds of effects without having this clip be in a sequence. So the notion of these any animation you want to do, a media clip needs to be in a sequence in order to animate it. So we'll start with the graphic, and we're just going to set the scale. So in order to enable animation, you need to come over to this little stopwatch, and when I hover over it, it says toggle animation. If you click it, it turns blue, and it enables some additional controls over here. So we'll start with the scale being 0. So now it disappears. And then the idea is that we'll move forward a certain amount. I'm not going to count how many it is. And then we're going to, I'm going to type in 75. And now you'll see that the graphic grows to that size and then stops. So we've animated a graphic to appear by growing it out of nothing. Now, in the case of this one, where we show you this one, you see that it looks a little big and then it pops back into place. So it does a little wow there. So if we wanted to do something like that, we would set another keyframe here and go back to this one. Now, you could try to line it up this way, where you are trying to find the exact point. But notice that you have these controls here that let you move between keyframes. This will let you jump between different keyframes in this particular parameter. So if I wanted to get exactly on that keyframe and then modify this value so that it's like that, now it grows out and kind of comes back down, okay? And so it might be a little too close. Maybe we need to move this a little closer. Yep, okay. So now it does this and it kind of draws attention to itself by being just that little bit larger and kind of floats and then drops back down. Now you have the other part of this, which is you have these two items and you want to have them revealed at the same time, but not before this is already shown up on screen. So we should probably do something like group them together. I haven't talked about grouping with them, but just like in Premiere, you can actually just like in Photoshop, you can actually group things together and create, and then treat them similarly or treat them identically as a single unit. So when you do a group, now if I take the group, I can do the opacity for the whole group. Isn't that right? Well, maybe not. It shows position and scale, doesn't show. So I can scale things, I can do other stuff like that. Oh, it doesn't show that. Oh, I'm sad. So the notion though of creating an effect. So let me see if I can find that effect that actually puts the text on the screen, because that was kind of a fun one that I haven't played with that one in a long time. Nope, not there. It's going to be under here, effects, and we'll do a linear wipe. And so notice that I can add an effect to a group, just like this. And in that effect, I can actually do this. I can do this. Completion is the transition completion is the value that I'm talking about. But what I want to do is I want to change it. So I'm going to flip the angle around. Oh no, actually I'm going to do it 270. There we go. So now when it starts at 0, I suppose it doesn't matter. I thought it did, but it doesn't. So we'll start it at 100. Oh no, it does. It does matter. My bad. 270. So I'm going to want it. I want to have the reveal happen in this direction so that it builds on from the left to the right. So we're going to start with the transition at 100. Keyframe that, which happens right after. Drop a keyframe for that right after the graphic finishes building on, and then move down a few frames, and then move this to 0. And so what you'll end up seeing is it pops onto screen, and then the text shows up relatively fast. Now, notice it has this hard edge. Something you can do with this is you can actually soften that. You can soften that edge using this this attribute called feather. You don't have to keyframe it, but you can actually make it so it's a little more smooth in terms of what it looks like from one frame to the next. So then the final result is something that looks like this, okay? So that is animating a graphic onto the screen. You don't have to do it exactly like this. You could just fade things on, though fading objects onto the screen is relatively easy, is relatively basic. It's not bad. It's just you're just basically working on the opacity group right here. You're keyframing this element right here. You do actually have opacity for all of these elements as well, so you can keyframe anything that has a stopwatch next to it can be keyframed. So I encourage you to play with that and try things. That's where you're going to learn the most about doing this, is you're going to be doing this on top of, you're going to create a graphic, you're going to create different layers on there, and then you animate those on in some kind of interesting way. You'll also want them to animate off at the end. And so what we can do there is just fade. So we can do an opacity move here. We will keyframe opacity for the entire graphic, and then move to the end of the clip and set the opacity to 0. Watch what happens when I change this value. It automatically creates a new keyframe just from changing that value. So just a reminder that as you move through, you'll see that play out. So now the whole thing, it animates on, you see the text come on, it holds for a few seconds and then fades off, okay? And that is the demo today.